welcome to JailTalk. My name is Rob McAfee, of course, with you, Vice President of Sales here at Turnkey Corrections.
And I'm Kylie Eckeren, Field Marketing Manager at Turnkey Corrections as well.
And we are in the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office at the Lincoln County Jail in Newport, Oregon. And we're happy to have today Dennis Buckmaster, and he's the jail counselor, adults in custody counselor.
Well,
use the word inmate in the West Coast.
Yeah, my new shirts say counselor.
Yeah, there you go, just counselor. So Dennis has been with the Sheriff's Office here in Lincoln County for over 10 years.
15 years.
15 years. And so he has been involved in really the growth of programming, the growth of mental health treatment in the jail from its infancy. Because when you got hired, we really didn't have a program of mental health. We had resources, but nothing like what we do now. And so here in the jail, I say we, I've worked here for 11 years, so I'll try to stay away from saying we, but that's how I always think of Dennis. I think of Dennis as a we, right? Because we worked together for so long. So Dennis, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and what got you into the jail here in Lincoln County.
Well, I went to school late, so I went to college when I was 31.
Okay.
So I was a non-traditional student.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to become a teacher, and then I realized they don't make any money.
For sure.
And so in order for us to stay on the coast, I had to have a job to make some money.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went into counseling.
Yeah.
What I did was I took a bunch of intro 2 classes, and this is something I still tell people who are thinking about going to college,
Sure.
who don't know what they want to do.
Yeah.
Is that first couple of years, you got to take a lot of electives.
There you go.
Fill them with intro 2s so that you can kind of get a feel for all different kinds of fields
Sure.
of interest.
Great.
Graduated from Oregon State University with my graduate degree in counseling, and then started to work for Lincoln County Mental Health, working as a crisis counselor, adult mental health counselor, and civil commitment investigator. I became a senior civil commitment investigator, which just means you do it more than 10 years.
There you go.
I did that I worked for them for 15 years, and then the counselor at the jail was retiring, and I applied for the job, and I got it, and this is the best job I've ever had.
There you go. That's
I did
awesome.
crisis for 15 years, and this is
Yeah.
Oh, good.
And I'm glad you said you did crisis for 15 years. So one of the things, and I'm going to fall back on some of the stuff I know from being here. One of the things we always have talked about in trainings and everything about that is the crisis that is happening every day to the folks that come to jail. And if you could speak to it a little bit, when people come to jail, it is, for many of them, the biggest crisis in their life.
Especially their first couple of times being arrested.
Sure.
Because I can't think of anybody that's going to be comfortable having strangers put hands all over their body and then making them strip naked and then have their body examined by strangers. I mean, that's all traumatizing events.
Mm-hmm.
And so that first couple of times you're arrested and you're going through this really strange process and you have no idea what to expect next, you are being traumatized.
Sure.
And we have to take that into account. One of the programs that we started here was training the corrections officers on how traumatizing what they have to do is and how they can minimize that. That verbal cue explanation of what they're going to be doing and why they have to do it.
Sure.
So the person feels more connected with the process right now. It's not a good problem. It still is a process for security.
Yep, and that's it. But safety and security necessitates the process. But the process to somebody who, as you mentioned, may have been at home yesterday and never been in jail, eye-opening in many ways.
In many ways.
It's a different experience for them. So when you talk about training the staff, the other thing that I know we've talked about in the past is some of the vicarious trauma that the staff can absorb too. And so I think now you're seeing more and more of that being openly discussed in trainings for corrections officer, for police, law enforcement, fire. Talk a little bit about that too. So the vicarious trauma may not be something that people recognize on a day-to-day basis.
Especially policemen or law enforcement officers, because they're tough.
Yeah.
They got to be manly.
Yeah.
Even I shouldn't say this. You'll probably have to.
Yeah, well, was it?
Even the female officers have to be kind of tough.
Right. There you go. Yeah. Right.
But they have to kind of bottle up any kind of emotion because what they're doing is not normal activity for a human being.
Mm-hmm.
When you're trying to engage with somebody, you don't usually go pushing them up against the wall. And, and I use that a lot because it's usually the first encounter that somebody has with law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
And then they spend hours listening to traumatizing stories, the bad things that happen in people's lives. It's amazing how open a person becomes when they're locked up. And they have pretty much, they are a captive audience, and they pretty much, the officers that are taking care of them are captive. They hear all of the bad trauma that they've had to endure, being on drugs or being abused and being taken advantage of, beaten. Some horrible, horrible things that happen to people. And deputies have to read the reports, and they have to.
Well, they got to take that home. They got to take it home.
You don't want to.
Right. Yeah. Right.
The whole point is not.
A lot of them do.
A normal human being, you can't just turn that stuff off.
Yeah.
So we do trainings every day of some sort, and then we get a full month of mental health training with the deputies, where we go over some of these. That you are at high risk for vicarious trauma, and we point them to the employee assistance program. They have free counseling sessions that they can go to. We try to make the word counseling for law enforcement officers palatable, so they don't feel like they're weak for going and asking for some help with some of these things. But it can affect your marriage, your children, if you take that stuff home.
Yeah.
You need to go downstairs, take a shower, leave it all here.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's so important. I think you mentioned the first step is acknowledging it exists, and then how to deal with the issues.
Yeah. Some of these guys will never acknowledge that they're stressed.
Right.
Ever.
Yeah.
It's just
it's not part of their psyche. Yeah.
But we keep training them anyway because they slowly are coming around, recognizing that, hey, you don't have to lose your marriage to be a law enforcement officer.
Well, and even then, post-career, right? We talk about statistics around the country for people that retire from law enforcement. Is there's some bad numbers.
Oh, yeah, law enforcement officers are one of the highest risk occupations for suicide.
Yep. After the fact.
After the fact, yeah. I mean, it's a tough career. Yeah. And it takes a good person to be in it, and it takes an even stronger person to seek the support they need. Yeah. To keep going.
I think it's huge. All right, so let's get back into the jail specifically as far as what the adults in custody or inmates are facing on a day-to-day basis. Mental health, and this is going to be a question you probably get 100 times a year, I bet. When you look at the population we have about 145 people in the jail today. What's your percentage of mental health issues for those 145? Generally, you can say it. That's okay. I know what you're going to say, so go ahead and say it.
A large percentage. Yeah. I would say over 60% have some kind of mental health issue. Yeah. 10% have severe mental illness. Yeah. These are folks that can't function in the community and have committed crimes and are working their way through the legal system, which when you don't understand what's going on and you can't communicate effectively, that legal system almost storms. And so they can be here for months and months just waiting for a simple case of disorderly conduct to make it through the courts.
And is that through the civil commitment process, or is that just...
No, this is through the aid and assist process, which is the court has to order them to the state hospital for evaluation and treatment so that they can understand the court system and the legal process that they're being charged with. Mm-hmm. And when they get done at the hospital and are pronounced able to aid and assist, their attorney, then they come back and they finish up their thing. But that can take, a year sometimes.
Yeah.
For that whole process.
And when you're looking at that process and you said, okay, they're going to go to the state hospital in Oregon, obviously there's a limited number of beds there, and that can take.
And they just wait here.
They just wait here, and this may not be the best spot for them.
And their court case doesn't move anywhere. It just is stagnant. It stops.
There's no time clock.
No time. It just stops.
So, in a perfect world, then where would you make some adjustments? Where's the tweak? Yeah. No, I'm just saying, because like we broadcast this podcast hoping that people in jails are saying, okay, I'm going to watch this because I might hear an idea that is going to help my program, my jail, my system. What's one thing they can do differently?
Well, in Oregon, the whole mental health system is broken. The Oregon State Hospital is pretty much, it's only for those that are criminally ill, have a mental illness and have committed crimes.
Mm-hmm.
So all other acute mental health people that need psychiatric hospitalization have to go to private hospitals. And they're all full.
Yes.
Okay? And so the next place for them to go is to come to jail. And so that's why we have 10% of our population that really should be in a hospital, but there's no room in the hospital.
Right.
Anywhere in the state. It's not like we would ship them,
Yes.
And for those that are on the East Coast who don't understand how big Oregon is, it's as big as a real Eastern or Western European country.
Right. So when you look at France,
I'm looking at
or Spain,
traveling 9 to 10 hours to get to the other side of the state.
Yep. Right, and I've had that discussion with people before. We talk about in Minnesota, Wisconsin, where we're based. I can drive from the far western edge of Wisconsin to the far eastern edge of Wisconsin, the Great Lakes, in 4 hours.
Yeah.
I can't get halfway across Oregon.
No, you'd be stuck in the desert.
Yeah, just outside of bed. I'd be just right outside of
You'd
bed.
be driving, probably.
Yeah, right. That'd be even worse. So that one change then, what do you look for? What's is there one thing, or is it there's so many steps that there is no clear-cut path, or is there multiple paths forward?
Well, a lot of the private psychiatric hospitals have reduced their numbers, and I don't know exactly why they did that, but I think it had to do with economics, how much the state was paying for those beds.
Sure.
And so a lot of them have cut their number of beds that they have available. When I was working for the mental health office, we could take somebody who had committed a crime, had a mental illness, the law enforcement officers could bring them to the local ER.
Sure.
And me as a crisis worker could take them from the ER and send them directly to a psychiatric unit.
Okay.
We had enough beds to be able to do that. As more and more people filled up and as they reduced the number of beds available, that option became non-existent.
Okay.
I used to come into this jail as a crisis worker, and you had a mentally ill person that was brought in by the local police, and I could evaluate them and make arrangements for them to go to the psych hospital from jail.
Mm-hmm.
And that's totally off the table now. We can't even try it now.
That's because of space.
Because there's no beds.
Yeah.
We are the hospital that
There we go. That's kind of one of the things I was trying to say, and I think that from what your experience has been, you know a lot. Obviously, I'm sure you know people around the country in the industry. Is that kind of the norm, nationwide?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I went to the national convention for National Corrections Health Convention for Mental Health, and yeah, it's just that people are running into the same thing all over the country.
Yeah.
And that there's no place for mentally ill people to go, and if they're committing a crime, they're going to end up in jail, and they're just going to stay there.
And like you mentioned earlier, the crimes are not like necessarily they're not person-on-person crime or huge property crimes.
No, it might be reckless burning. That would be a really bad crime.
Mm-hmm.
They were cold, so they started a fire out in somebody's field.
Yeah.
Disorderly conduct, just yelling at traffic, maybe stepping into traffic. That one I could have gotten committed for, but now they can't do that. They just don't have anything. needs to do that.
And like you said, then, so somebody comes in on disorderly conduct, they have to get evaluated to be aid assist. And you're talking about a crime that if you or I committed that crime today.
Oh yeah, we'd be given a ticket and go home.
Right, and then they're in jail for 18 months.
Yeah.
Between like psychiatric hospital and jail. That's tough.
Yeah, but what's good is that Lincoln County, okay, so you push us now, why this is such a great job.
Yeah, there you go. Let's go. Man, that's what we
Why
want to
this
know.
is such a great job.
That's right.
Lincoln County Sheriff's Office since 1991 has had on-staff mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So we've always had a counselor in the jail. What we've been able to do in the last 15 years is really build the programs to enhance having a counselor in the jail. And now we have 2 counselors.
Right.
So, we don't have space to do twice as many programs,
Right.
but we have 2 of us working on this problem at the same time. So we're able to treat people who come into the jail, maintain them on their medications. We have a psychiatrist now that does telepsych with us. We do the initial evaluation. She will do telepsych and prescribe medications for people who haven't been on a medication before ever.
Wow.
And be able to get people stabilized. So a lot of times they don't have to go to the state hospital to be stabilized. We're able to do it here in the jail. And that shortens that amount of time that they have to stay in custody somewhere.
Yeah.
So that's something that's, was unheard of before.
Sure. A game changer, really.
Yeah, they didn't do psychiatric treatment in the jail.
Well, and I would think that, and I don't want to push medication on anybody or anything like that, but I would think having that resource available had to be not life-changing for you maybe, but life-changing for many of those people in that
Well, for
trouble.
those 14 people that are acutely mentally ill, that's the prime source of their treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Is the medication to get their thinking clear enough that they're able to function and understand why they're being held, what it is they're supposed to be having done, what their attorney is supposed to be doing for them.
Sure.
The medication allows them to be able to think and to understand that process.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when they're off the medication and all of the internal stimulus and the voices and the scenarios that are going around, delusions in their head, they're paying most attention to all that. And they can't pay attention to what the judge is saying in front of them.
Sure.
So medication is a big deal.
Yeah.
It's also the largest expense the jail has.
Sure. Yeah.
Psychiatric medication.
Okay, so now we're there, right? So we're going right now from mental health, and we talked about the impact on staff, the impact on the people that are in the jail, but then the impact on the taxpayers.
Yeah.
When you look at that impact on that side, on the fiscal side of it, for the government side, the jail, the sheriff, the county, and as a whole, where does that money come from? How does that money, and how is the benefit then seen by the county taxpayers?
Well, you said it comes from the general fund, which is the taxpayers in the county.
Sure.
And it's a huge expense.
Sure.
How is it realized? Well, we get, your cousin or your brother or your sister that's in jail and psychotic on medication sent back home again.
There you go.
And they're not standing out in the street yelling and screaming.
Yeah.
We liaison with the local community mental health people,
Mm-hmm.
so that when we get them started on their medications here, they've got somebody to keep them on their medications when they get out.
Yeah.
The hard part is that's always a personal choice for the patient.
Sure.
And they said these medications have some bad side effects.
Sure.
And some people just can't stand the side effects and they'll stop the medicine.
Yeah.
Then they might do the whole round over again.
Well, so.
But the benefit is that everybody who's in this jail is a resident of Lincoln County.
Yeah.
It's your neighbor. I went home once and I had one of these guys up on my roof of my house.
Yeah.
Because he worked for the roofer.
Yeah. Right.
I had a friend of mine that lived across the street have a mental health episode and end up in the jail. These are people we know. These are our brothers and sisters. I had a niece that was mentally ill looking for it. She's a member of the community.
Right.
These are our brothers, our sisters, our sons, our daughters, our neighbors, and we have a responsibility as a society to care for them and help them to live as productive a life as possible.
Yeah.
So that's one of the programs that we provide is the mental health services here in the jail.
And so do you see then, So you made that impact, you got somebody out of jail, you got somebody on medication, maybe perhaps for the first time ever. Yeah, and hopefully you've seen some of that then. Maybe they get out and they're like, wow, I didn't even know I needed the medication. Now that
Yeah, but you had this one kid who for years,
yeah,
several years, told me he wasn't mentally ill.
right.
We finally got him to take some medicine just to calm himself down.
Mm-hmm.
And when he was released after that stay, he went out, he got a job, he got an apartment, he
Yeah.
did really well.
Yeah.
You know, he was still mentally ill and still had to take the medicine, but he finally realized the dream of having his own place to live instead of living in a bush.
Well, and still mentally ill is kind of like an addiction, right? So like you can be an addict once, actively using, addicted to drugs, actively using, overdosing yearly, maybe needing medical intervention. Even when you're clean, you're still classified as an addiction survivor, or you're addicted. You're not. So once you have mental health, taking the meds keeps you from being acutely or emergently mentally mental health crisis,
yeah.
right? But you're still mentally ill in some level.
Yeah,
and that's probably all of us.
It's like diabetes. You have to take your medicine.
That's
it's like heart. Actually, more like high blood pressure.
Sure.
Because the person that has it doesn't feel it.
Right.
They don't know that it's there. The doctor has to tell you it's there, and then you take a pill every day for something that you don't feel or know it's there. But it's been pounded into our heads for so many generations now that if you have high blood pressure, you take your medicine.
Exactly.
Well, we need to get that kind of a cultural norm that it's okay to take your psychiatric medication if you have a psychiatric illness.
For sure. Kylie?
Kind of wanted to loop back to like your staff as well here at Lincoln County, but what advice would you give to anybody that they feel maybe struggling internally but is too quote unquote tough to come forward and ask for help? Like what advice would you give them?
The number one thing that I tell everybody who works here is that they need to have some kind of social activity outside of the office that has nothing to do with their fellow law enforcement officers. It needs to be completely separate, whether it's volunteering with the Boy Scouts or going to a church or belonging to a motorcycle club.
Youth sports.
Youth sports. I forgot about this. He's going to get this. We're not talking about sports here. But something so that when you get out of here, you've got that stress relief and a group of supporters who are not also law enforcement tough guys.
Yeah.
And so that you can leave it at the office and go home and say, oh my gosh, you spend 12 hours of your day here in jail and watching all these people come in with all these problems, and you think the whole county of Lincoln County is like that. Mm-hmm. Everybody in the county has got all these problems. Well, then you go out to Little League Ball and you see all these young kids and the parents out there cheering, and they're normal and they're achieving things and they're goal-oriented, and you can not get caught up in your stuff. So that's the number one thing. Find something, some outlet. If you're into stamp collecting, join the stamp collecting club.
Yeah.
If you're into yoga, join the yoga group. I got a motorcycle. So
That's like yoga.
Yeah, same thing. Only.
So find something outside. I was also involved in Boy Scouts.
Yeah.
I took scouts out camping on the weekends instead of working with mentally ill people.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Some boys are a little mentally ill.
Yeah.
But I was one once. So I could kind of relate to that.
There you go. I think most people can relate on some level, whether it's a seasonal thing or when you've had moments of crisis in your life. I know it's fairly normal, I would think, for the great majority of the population to have some sort of mental illness episode in their life.
I think you're right. At one time or another, you're going to be just a little bit too stressed or just a little bit depressed about something. It goes on longer than you normally see it.
Yeah.
And you may start to even be concerned internally that, this really hit me hard, Or, at work, you might have seen something, injuries or something, and you just can't get it out of your thoughts. That was horrible. What happened to that person? a traffic accident scene
Yeah,
where, there's body parts
yeah,
and you just can't get it out of your head.
Yeah.
If that goes on for too long, that's when we need to start asking questions.
Yeah.
I don't want to run out of time before we talk about programs too.
let's do it, let's talk about it. But you brought it up, I know Kylie talked about it a little bit with the staff, but let's talk about jail programs. So let's go, that's what my last part of the episode was going to be.
Well, you didn't even have an outline.
It's all on the computer. I'm telling you, it's very conversational, but I have an outline in my computer.
I'm just glad that we've conversed before.
That's right. So the silver lining, right? That's what we're going to get to. The silver lining. Because it does, there's a lot of, we're talking about all these really heavy subjects. The silver lining for me, and I know it is for you because I've known you for so long, but the programs the jail offers and the success that it provides to the people.
Yeah, what about the other 60% of
Yes, I'm talking about,
the jail that have mental health issues, that may not be this.
Let's talk about it. What's the program's menu look like here at Lincoln County?
We've got basically for areas of interest.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got our religious or spiritual programs. We've got our education programs.
Mm-hmm.
We've got our addictions programs, and then we've got some mental health programs. And some of them will kind of bleed over. I mean, some of the spiritual stuff will help with mental health and addictions and that. But as most people know, programs cost a lot of money.
Sure.
Okay. And staff time, and we obviously don't have that. We've got 2 counselors.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we fill up? We fill up a room that's busy 7 days a week in the jail with programs.
Okay.
So that's a lot of hours of programming that we fill up. And so and they're all facilitated by volunteers that volunteer for the sheriff's office to come in and provide those programs.
Crucial part of the equation is the volunteers. We work with Dakota County, Minnesota quite regularly. It's our very first county as a company that we have to provide services to. And they do a volunteer celebration dinner. And it's amazing. You get all these people in there and you realize, wait, they have 50 staff members that are unpaid.
Yeah. We do the same thing every year because we value them so much. And we wouldn't have any programs if we didn't have volunteers. Mm-hmm. And to get volunteers, it's important that the administration, the sheriff, the lieutenants, the sergeant, even down to the corporals and the deputies. Again, those outside connections, people you know. But we've put one of our staff members on all of the advisory committees in the county. Mm-hmm. So we've got a mental health advisory committee, we've got a domestic violence advisory committee, we've got an addictions advisory committee, we've got a health advisory committee. And these are all government, they don't get paid, they're volunteers.
Sure.
We put somebody on there to make these connections socially throughout the community so that when we have a need, we can take our needs to these people that we've met at these committees and say, hey, we need some volunteers to do this. Or we might hear in one of those meetings that they've met somebody that's really good at doing something that we're interested in starting up here in the jail. And that works really, really well. Mm-hmm. It took us several years to really cultivate it. You have to keep it up. And some of these meetings are really hard to sit through. But that's where you start getting the field of volunteers from. And then Lincoln County has I think it's through the Senior Services Office, they have a volunteer fair every year where all of the people who need volunteers set up booths, and people who are interested in volunteering will go around and see what kind of opportunities are available. Sure. That's kind of the intro to classes.
There you go. Yeah, the intro to, that's right. That's good.
And so we've gotten quite a few volunteers for that also. Yeah. But we've got some regular mental health therapy classes for people who are anxious and depressed, where they're taught some cognitive behavioral therapy techniques to help manage their depression. These are for the other 60%.
Sure.
That are pretty functional, but their stress levels past that acceptable amount of time.
Yeah.
We've got all of the 12-step programs represented in the jail. We've got NA and AA and Al-Anon and Celebrate Recovery. They all come in and do a program in the jail, and it's a little different than when I say AA groups. We have AA groups in the jail, but it's different than an AA group out in the community.
Sure.
It's more of an educational group to prepare people to participate in the AA when they get out. So introducing them to the process rather than doing the process. And so those all help. Then we've got 2 local drug and alcohol programs that come in and do a group each week.
Okay.
Both of them are on re-entry skills and recovery skills, and get them signed up for outpatient treatment before they get released, for those that are ready to do that. One of them goes really deep into what kind of community resources are out there for when you get out of jail, so you can get yourself set back up again. And one of them is more kind of internal, are you ready to go into treatment? And commit yourself to recovery. Then we have a pretty good, and through COVID, this was really hard. Prison Fellowship comes in every week, and they do an hour and a half with the various housing units, which is a pretty in-depth kind of study of scripture and spiritual Bible study stuff. And then on Sundays, we have different congregations in the community that come in on different weekends to provide just a worship service.
Yeah.
And all of those are done with volunteers.
Yeah.
So it's really
still doing yoga.
Still doing yoga.
Yeah. And a yoga group.
And I had to actually teach it for.
Yeah.
And it hurt my shoulders, so I couldn't.
Yeah. Right.
But we still have a yoga instructor that comes in, and he is really deep into the spiritual part of yoga.
Sure.
The meditation and the internal kind of practices. And then in my mindfulness class, which is it's my mindfulness-based stress reduction class, we use yoga as one of our mindfulness groups, and we do the exercise that us Westerners are used to calling yoga. But yoga is all of that. It's a pretty big thing, but it's a huge. That was really. I had a really hard time getting the law enforcement officers to agree to that.
Yes, I know.
You were here.
I was here.
They fought me all the way because they didn't want us to become some kind of country club for the.
But I think and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I may not have been present for every conversation. The end result, the stress reduction, the release of tension, the release of maybe that mental toxicity after the classes started. Yeah. I think the benefit was visualized really quickly.
I did a 3-month study of the number of uses of force in the female pod prior to doing yoga, and then we did the female pod with yoga for 3 months, and we reduced the number of physical use of forces by 6%. That's not a scientific study. No, it helped me gain the support of the.
I mean, even if you said, we could talk about jail management on another episode, but like when you look at a jail commander or a sheriff, one of the things the jail is the hot word in jail management is liability.
Oh yeah.
So if you eliminate one use of force, period, for the whole facility, you have reduced the liability exposure for the jail. Yeah. And that's a huge, huge accomplishment. Yeah, so
I had to get the corrections officer.
Yes.
And now they are, except they don't like the yoga.
They don't like the clothes. You gotta change the clothes.
Because they put rules on when they can wear their clothes.
Yes.
And when they want to break those rules, then the corrections officer is going to get it.
There you go. Well, it's all good. Kylie, anything else for you?
I don't think so. I think it's been great having you.
I think everybody should take a mindfulness-based stress reduction class.
Mindfulness-based stress reduction. And it is really powerful.
Yes, and it's all over the United States. Everybody. It's like the in thing to do.
Right. And mindfulness.
But it's been going on.
It's not always the power of now, right? It's not always focus on the present. Mindfulness that's kind of where it went after Eckhart Tolle wrote his book. It's kind of mindfulness means focus on this moment, this very moment, it's not all that.
It's not all that. No.
Yeah. So,
Mindfulness stress reduction program actually comes from Dr. John Kabat-Zinn from Massachusetts General University also.
yeah.
Where in the 70s he started using it with patients that were chronic patients, and they saw a huge just their. And so people who are stressed in the jail, if they get that stress under control, they're way easier to manage.
Inmate management.
Is the key to
The key.
running a
Yeah.
successful jail.
Yeah.
I mean, someday, it'd be nice if we didn't have. You can do one on our pre-trial.
We're going to talk about the pretrial
You
release
bet.
a little bit tomorrow.
That was-
On a new episode.
That was our lifesaver during COVID.
Yeah, it was. It was huge.
Huge.
So, huge. Well, Dennis, thank you so much. I know.
Yes, thank you so much. It's been great.
I can't say it's been great.
It's been great.
It's been nice to talk about.
It's been nice. It's been great because I know you're coming to the end of your career with the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office. You're going to retire soon, but you should look back on that career as a very proud moment for you, a very good chunk of time.
Well, most of the mental health stuff has been developed while I've been
Yeah, that's where the program came from. We had a counselor, but
we had a counselor. We had a pretty good kind of addictions stuff going on.
It's a huge addition to the services that jail provides in terms of rehabilitation, reentry into the community, all that.
Bringing mental health to the forefront of the staff.
Yeah.
And their mental health,
Yes.
which they very rarely.
We never discussed it before you.
And how that impacts the entire building.
Yep. Yeah.
When they do the tours, everybody comes by my office. Well, how do you like our city?
Yeah.
Because you come into Lincoln County Jail, it's just a mini city. We've got everything a city has, and we have to make it all work.
That's right. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you again for being on with us.
We'll send you the link.
Yes.
All right.
All right, everybody watching from home, be sure to find us on YouTube and Spotify at JailTalk Podcast. And be sure to like, follow, and subscribe on YouTube, Instagram, and you can also find us at turkeycorrections.com.
All right, for Kylie Ekron, I'm Rob McAfee, Dennis Buckmaster. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on a new episode of Jail Talk.